Hey everyone, welcome back to the Library of Parthos. My name is Sarah. I guess if you spend a large period of time in a room with a lot of people and then immediately go outside into the woods for like 2 hours at night in the winter, something's gonna get you. So I apologize for my very sultry voice today, but I think my hubby and I are recovering from the flu. That's kind of my best guess as to what we got after this past weekend. Still able to function and go to work and everything, but ready for a weekend where I can rest a little bit. But today I want to talk to you about a newer release, a book that I was super excited about, and that is Saint by Adrienne Young. Now this is a prequel to the duology Fable and Namesake, which I do have a review of, and I will link that here. So I'm going to give a very brief summary, and then I'm going to go into some spoilers, not only for Saint, but also just by nature of trying to explain my thoughts on the book, I might end up spoiling some things for Fable and Namesake, though I'm going to try really hard not to do that. Short summary that I don't think will give anything away. So this is a dual point of view story where we have the perspective of Saint, obviously. He is a sailor in the Narrows, and he is trying to get his trading license. And then we also have the point of view of, okay, I don't quite know how to pronounce her name. I looked up like different pronunciations and I swear they were all different. So I'm gonna go with Isolde, I think. Isolde? I'm not really sure which one it is, or if I'm even saying that close to correct. So I apologize if that's incorrect. If you can, in the comments, tell me how you would say it, I would appreciate it. Anyway, she is trying to escape from the area she is raised in, so she is looking to get passage on a ship and kind of work her way out of where she comes from. So I feel like that's as much as I can really say without spoilers and without spoiling Fable and Namesake too much. So from here on out, I will be getting into some spoilers as I share my thoughts on the story. So if you want to avoid those, then you can skip to the end of the video. And if I come to any spoilers for Fable or Namesake, of course, I will try to point those out if I realize that I'm spoiling something. First of all, in terms of like where you should read this book, I don't know if there are going to be like more prequels, because where Saint ends and where Fable begins, there is still a lot of time. So it's very possible that there could be another book between them in the future. So I think, obviously, because this book just came out, I read Fable and Namesake first, and then I read Saint. And I think that was very helpful because Saint's character is very different in Fable and Namesake. He's at a very different point in his life. And so I feel like it would be really hard to understand the way the character's acting if you read the prequel first. Just my opinion. You know, other people might now read the prequel first and then read Fable and Namesake and be perfectly fine with it, but I think I'm really glad I read them in the order that I did. In Fable and Namesake, Saint was my favorite character, and so when I found out that this book was coming out, I was super excited to see that backstory. We get a little glimpse of it in Fable and Namesake, but I gotta say I was pretty disappointed. I felt like the dual point of view made it kind of hard to make a connection to Saint, and that was kind of an issue that I had with Fable and Namesake. Like, I just really wasn't feeling connected to any of the characters, and I was forgetting who people were. Now, I didn't have that issue in this book because I already knew who most of the people were. However, I don't feel like, for a book that's called Saint, I don't feel like I got enough of Saint. And I'm glad I got Isolde's perspective. I probably said that differently than I did before, and I'm sorry. I feel like it wouldn't work without her perspective because there would be so much information missing, and there would be, like, they'd have to have they would have to have so much dialogue to make up for that missing information that I don't think it would work if we didn't have her perspective, which is why I'm almost hoping that there's another book. Even though now I was disappointed in this book, I would read that just to kind of see if I felt more of a connection to Saint after that. The other issue that I have, and this might be a little bit of a spoiler for Fable, is that in Fable and Namesake both, we are introduced to this idea, because Isolde is not a character in Fable and Namesake, but we are told about this great like romance that she and Saint had and how in love they were, and like she's his entire world, and that kind of just like wasn't here. I don't know. So that was another issue that I kind of had with the book, and I'll get into that a little bit later. One thing that I did really like, and I did enjoy this about Fable and Namesake as well, is the world building. There's a lot of time and effort put into the world building. There is a map of the Narrows and the Unnamed Sea, which are like the two major areas that these books take place in. And so just like in Fable and Namesake, the author spends a lot of time creating those areas, those cities, those ports, and kind of describing the difference between people who live in the Narrows and people who live in the Unnamed Sea. Now, Saint is from the Narrows, just to kind of clarify this a little bit for anyone who doesn't know and is still watching. The Narrows is kind of like, I don't know, like the down and dirty area. Like they don't have quite the reputation that the Unnamed Sea does. In Bastion, the town where Isolde is from, they have a big traders guild where there's the gem traders guild, and like you have to have your crest like verified by the guild before you can start trading. Her mother, Holland, is one of the most respected and well-known gem traders in that area. And so the towns and the ports within the Narrows are now trying to become that. So they're trying to create their own traders guild, which has happened in this book. They're trying to grant these licenses to trade to the sailors so that they can try to build up that same level of importing and exporting that the Unnamed Sea is known for. And also, it's kind of hinted that the people in the Narrows feel like the Unnamed Sea have really made money off of the Narrows because they didn't have this trading guild set up, so they feel like they need to kind of get that money and all of that business back. So I really enjoyed all of that world building. Just like in Fable and Namesake, this whole idea of like gems and dredging for gems in the ocean, which is where they like dive down to like dig them out of the ocean floor, and the idea of somebody being a gem sage is fascinating to me, and I was really interested to hear about how that was a part of what these characters were experiencing. So a gem sage is somebody who can kind of like hear the difference between the gems, and so Isolde is a gem sage, and the reason that she leaves her home is because her mother was basically using her as a gem sage to make money, and so she was kind of tired of being used. So one of the things that I did like about the character Saint, and I might get into some Fable and Namesake spoilers for sure here, because I think this was why I liked him, I think, so much in those books, and one of the things that I liked about him here is he has this like very calm demeanor about him. Like, I don't know, he just handles, for the most part, everything, whether he's angry or no matter what he's feeling, he just handles it like very calmly and very matter-of-factly. And I think in Fable and Namesake, that was kind of one of the things that people were kind of scared of about him. And so I just kind of appreciated seeing that that's not like, I don't know, it wasn't like a fear tactic. It was kind of just like who he is. Maybe it's a fear tactic too, I don't know, but I thought that was cool. And also seeing where he got the name Saint. He kind of abides by all of those old tales of sailors surviving storms because they make a deal with sea demons and all of this stuff. But he and Clove, his navigator, were known for sailing into very dangerous storms and coming out of them perfectly fine. And so he got the nickname Saint because they were seemingly, defying all odds and coming out of these situations unscathed. And in reality, they were barely scraping by, but he kind of developed that reputation because of that. In Fable and Namesake, also, another spoiler, we learned that Isolde had been a dredger for Zola, and so I liked seeing that situation play out and how she managed to get on to Zola's crew, and then how she also managed to get out of being on his crew and working with Saint as well. And then kind of wrapping up, I know I haven't talked much about the plot of the book, but I think it's kind of hard to understand the plot without understanding the plot of Fable, and also without ruining the plot of Fable. One of the details that I did appreciate about Saint is that he spends so much time making a very detailed map of the Narrows. And I think that's an important detail for something that happens in Fable, which I won't spoil, but I think if you read it, you'll maybe figure out what I'm talking about. But in Fable, Saint has already created this empire of trading, and here he's just getting started. And one of the ways that he makes some of his money initially is by creating this extremely beautiful detailed map of the Narrows. And then he sells it to a forger and just takes a cut of the profits. And so the map of the Narrows that most of the people are using was actually created by him. And I thought that was a really cool detail. Now, again, like I said earlier, one of the major things that was just kind of hinted at and explained in Fable and Namesake were this relationship between Saint and Isolde. And I just didn't really feel like we got much of that. I know this was a story about how they kind of first met, but I just really didn't get those vibes. There wasn't a whole lot going on there. Until the epilogue. I felt like the epilogue showed it, but it was so quick and then it was over. So, I mean, other than the first time I saw you, I knew kind of thing going on, I don't know, there wasn't a whole lot of what I expected for how that relationship was described. Now, in the epilogue, it does say that Saint had a desk, custom made, that could sit on the deck of the ship right next to the rail so that he could watch the water while he was creating the map. Because Isolde was a dredger, so she was down in the water diving, and he wanted to watch and keep an eye on her. And I was like, oh, that totally shows how much he cares for her. He wants to keep an eye on her at all times. He was the first face she saw when she came up out of the water. That was a moment and a detail where I was like, yes, I get it. That makes perfect sense for how their relationship was described, or at least the vibe that I got from their relationship. That was really it. I don't know. I expected more, I guess, but there were definitely parts of the story that I enjoyed. Again, I think Saint still is my favorite character. I just feel like there's more that I want to know about him. So I guess that means if there's another book, I'll read it. But I didn't quite get what I was hoping out of this book. If you get to read any of those books, please let me know what your thoughts are, particularly Saint. As I said, remains my favorite character from that series. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye!